All right, so we're diving deep today into David Sinclair's longevity research, and we're checking out this YouTube video you sent over, where he makes some pretty bold claims about turning back the clock on aging.
Yeah, he really does. And what I find fascinating is he's not all talk. Sinclair's a Harvard genetics professor, and he's actually putting his research into practice, experimenting with diet and lifestyle changes to see if he can actually make himself biologically younger.
He even compares his blood work to a 20-year-old's. So we have to unpack this, right? What are his key strategies? And more importantly, does the science back them up? We're going to try to find the most useful, actionable insights for you.
Sounds good. Let's start with exercise. Sinclair's approach is surprisingly simple. Just 3 10-minute bursts of high-intensity exercise per week, the kind that leaves you breathless.
Only 30 minutes a week. That's it. That doesn't sound too bad. Is that really all it takes?
Well, the key is intensity. Sinclair emphasizes pushing yourself to the point where your body experiences low oxygen levels, what he calls hypoxic exercise.
Interesting. So how does low oxygen benefit us? That sounds a little counterintuitive.
It's like a good stressor. Think of it that way. This low oxygen state triggers a bunch of responses in your body. Muscle growth, improved blood flow, and even the release of chemicals that could protect against aging.
So it's like giving our bodies a little jump start to get those anti-aging processes going.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get these intense bursts of exercise just about anywhere, like a quick sprint up the stairs, a few rounds of burpees. It all counts.
That's a relief. You won't find me running marathons anytime soon. Okay, so let's move on to something I find really interesting. Sinclair's eating habits. He's a big advocate for what's called time-restricted feeding.
Right. Sinclair argues that when you eat is just as important as what you eat. So he limits his eating to a 6-hour window every day and eats most of his calories in the evening.
6 hours. That's a pretty small window. To be honest, going that long without food makes me a little nervous.
It's definitely an adjustment, but the science behind it is really compelling. The key is something called autophagy. It's basically your body's way of cleaning house at a cellular level. So when you go without food for a while, your cells start to break down and recycle old or damaged components.
Feels like our cells are doing a deep clean key, getting rid of all the junk.
Exactly. And this process is linked to a whole bunch of benefits, like improved insulin sensitivity and reduced inflammation.
That makes sense. But let's be real. Most of us aren't used to going hours without eating. Are there any tips from Sinclair on making the transition to time-restricted feeding a bit easier?
He emphasizes staying hydrated all day long with water, tea, or coffee to help fight off hunger pangs. And if you're really struggling, he suggests incorporating a small amount of protein, like some nuts.
Okay, hydration.
Yeah.
And some protein if needed. What about the fasting window? How long should we be aiming for?
Sinclair recommends at least 16 hours. That's the sweet spot for activating those cellular cleanup processes.
16 hours. I have to admit, that sounds a bit daunting. Does our body eventually adjust to this?
Oh yeah, definitely. Sinclair says your liver learns to produce glucose and stabilize blood sugar levels, which reduces those hunger pangs.
So we're basically retraining our bodies to rely on different energy sources. I like that. Okay, so far we've got intense exercise in short bursts and time-restricted eating. What else does Sinclair do for longevity?
Now things get interesting. He really stresses the importance of eating stress plants. These are plants that have been grown in tough conditions, often without pesticides.
Stress plants. I've never heard that term before. What's so special about them?
Well, it's all tied into a concept called xenohormesis. When plants are exposed to stressors like drought or bad soil, they produce certain molecules that protect them.
So these stress plants are basically building up their defenses.
Exactly. And these defensive molecules can actually benefit us when we eat them. They seem to activate our own cellular defenses and maybe even have anti-aging effects.
It's like we're absorbing their resilience. I'm starting to see why he calls them stress plants.
He's even switched to a fully plant-based diet because he thinks his body responds better to it.
Wow, so are we talking about specific kinds of plants here?
Sinclair's diet is packed with colorful foods that are high in polyphenols, things like matcha, green tea, spinach, and olive oil. All of those are loaded with those beneficial plant compounds we were talking about.
Sounds like I need to revamp my grocery list. But let's be real, going fully plant-based is a huge change. What about people who aren't ready to give up meat entirely?
Before Sinclair went plant-based, he actually followed the Mediterranean and Okinawan diets, which are known for emphasizing vegetables and limiting meat.
Okay, so there's some flexibility there. It's good to know he has some alternatives. Now, I know a lot of people want to know about supplements, And Sinclair takes a few. So what's his reasoning behind that?
It's important to note that he doesn't get paid to promote any particular brands. These are just the supplements he uses personally. Resveratrol, NMN, and metformin.
Okay, let's break those down. First up is resveratrol. We already talked about it with the stress plants. What's the deal with this one?
Resveratrol is a polyphenol found in grapes and red wine. There's some research that suggests it might activate those sirtuin genes we talked about earlier, the ones that can protect against aging. But you probably need high doses to see any benefit.
So maybe skip that extra glass of wine.
Yeah.
And go for the supplement instead.
Exactly. Now, NMN, or nicotinamide mononucleotide, is another interesting one. It boosts NAD+ levels in your body, and NAD+ is important for cellular energy and DNA repair, but it declines with age.
So NMN is like giving our cells an energy boost. I like that idea.
Some early research even suggests it might help with cholesterol and blood pressure, but we still need more research to be sure.
Got it. And last we have metformin. That one's a bit different though, right? Isn't it a medication?
You're right. Metformin is usually used to treat type 2 diabetes, but researchers are getting more and more interested in its potential benefits for longevity and overall health. Research suggests it might protect against heart disease, frailty, and even Alzheimer's disease.
Wow, that's a pretty impressive list.
Right.
But it's important to remember that this research is still preliminary.
Absolutely. You should always talk to your doctor before taking any new supplements, especially a medication like metformin.
Good advice. All right, so we've covered all the things Sinclair does for longevity. What about the things he avoids?
He really stays away from sugar. He sees it as one of the main things that speed up the aging process.
No sugar. That's a hard one for a lot of people, myself included.
I know. It's tough. But Sinclair believes that sugar, especially glucose and fructose, can really damage your body. It's linked to high blood sugar, fatty liver disease, diabetes, and even cancer cell growth.
Okay, those are some pretty compelling reasons to cut back. But doesn't our body need glucose to work properly?
Yeah, it does. But Sinclair says that your body can actually produce its own glucose, especially if you're doing intermittent fasting, and you give it time to adjust.
Interesting. So we can train our bodies to be less reliant on sugar from food.
Exactly. He says if you do have some sugar, try to have it at the end of a meal to minimize blood sugar spikes, but overall, minimize your sugar as much as you can.
Okay, so sugar is out. What else does Sinclair avoid?
Bread meat, dairy, and alcohol.
Wow, that's quite a list. Let's start with bread. Why avoid that?
Sinclair explains that bread has a lot of carbs, which can lead to those same blood sugar spikes and crashes we talked about earlier. It affects your energy and focus.
So it's about keeping those energy levels steady throughout the day. That makes sense. What about meat? Many people consider it a staple.
Sinclair found that cutting out meat helped his cholesterol and triglyceride levels, which is especially important for him since heart disease runs in his family.
So there could be some benefits for your heart if you eat less meat. But what about protein? We need that for muscle.
Of course, Sinclair thinks plant-based protein may actually be better for those longevity pathways we were talking about. And he eats fish sometimes for the omega-3 fatty acids.
So there's plenty of protein to be found in plants.
Yeah.
What about dairy? I thought Sinclair doesn't have any allergies or intolerances.
He doesn't. He cut out dairy just to experiment. He believes it further reduced his protein intake, which could potentially activate the mTOR pathway.
The mTOR pathway. Remind me what that is again.
It's a pathway that's involved in aging. Limiting its activation could be beneficial.
Right. So cutting out dairy is another way to try to influence aging. Okay, last but not least, alcohol. Where does Sinclair stand on that one?
He decided to completely cut it out, based on recent research that suggests even moderate amounts of alcohol can be bad for your health.
Wow, that's dedication. I can't imagine it's easy for everyone to give up alcohol altogether.
I know, he understands that. So for those who just have to have a glass of wine, he recommends Pinot Noir. Remember those stress plants and resveratrol? Pinot Noir grapes are especially sensitive to stress, so they usually have higher resveratrol levels.
So if you are going to drink, choose wisely. It's all about making informed choices. We've covered so much today, from intense exercise and time-restricted eating to stress plants and supplements. Sinclair's approach is certainly thorough.
Oh, it is. And it's not random tips either. He's backing them up with scientific research and his own personal experiments.
Which is exactly what we want, the why behind the recommendations. We want to empower you to make your own choices about your health and longevity.
And speaking of empowerment, you know, Sinclair's approach is just one part of the story. There's so much more research out there on aging.
And that's what we'll be looking at next. Stay tuned as we explore more of Sinclair's work and the future of longevity research.
And that leads us to a really interesting part of Sinclair's work. His view on aging itself. He doesn't just think aging is this inevitable decline. He actually says it's a disease, and a treatable one at that.
Wait, aging is a disease. That's a bold statement. Most people just kind of accept it as a natural part of life.
I know it's a pretty big shift in how we think about it, but it's at the heart of Sinclair's work. He thinks that if we see aging as a disease, it opens up possibilities for treatments that could slow it down or even reverse it.
So instead of just dealing with the symptoms of getting older, we could actually try to fix the root cause.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about this research. He's not just looking for ways to make us live longer, but to extend our health span. Those years when we're free from all those age-related diseases and we can enjoy life.
I like that. It's not about quantity. It's about quality. So what does this disease of aging actually look like on a cellular level?
Sinclair points to something called epigenetic noise as a key driver of aging. Our epigenome is like a set of instructions that sit on top of our DNA and tell our genes when and how to express themselves. But over time, this epigenome can get messed up, leading to errors in gene expression.
So it's like the instructions for our cells get scrambled and things start to go wrong. No wonder things break down as we age.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And this epigenetic noise can contribute to all kinds of age-related problems, from wrinkles to cancer.
So how do we fight back against this epigenetic noise? Is that where all those lifestyle changes come in?
Yeah, definitely. Sinclair believes things like intermittent fasting exercise and a plant-based diet can all help protect our epigenome and reduce this noise. It's like we're giving our cells the best possible environment to function.
So we're keeping those cellular instructions nice and clear. Makes sense. But is there any pushback against this idea that aging is a disease? That seems pretty controversial.
Oh, there definitely is. Some scientists and ethicists argue that aging is a natural process, not a disease, and that trying to make people live longer could have unexpected consequences.
Like what kind of consequences?
Some worry about overpopulation, a strain on resources, and even a bigger gap between the rich and poor. If only wealthy people can afford longevity treatments.
Those are all really important things to think about. It sounds like there are a lot of ethical considerations as this research continues.
Absolutely. We need to have these conversations and carefully consider the potential effects of living longer. Sinclair knows about these concerns, and he thinks the benefits of slowing down aging, like reducing suffering, improving health span, and increasing productivity, outweigh the risks. He really encourages open discussion and thoughtful consideration as we move forward.
It's like we're entering uncharted territory. There are a lot of big questions, but one thing's for sure. The science of aging is moving fast, and Sinclair is definitely at the forefront.
He's really pushing the boundaries, and he's not alone. There's a whole community of scientists trying to understand aging and looking for ways to extend health span.
It's inspiring to see so much passion and innovation. It makes me hopeful that we might actually be able to crack the code of aging.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about Sinclair's own approach to longevity, but what about the bigger picture? Could his research lead to treatments that everyone could benefit from, not just people who can follow his strict routine?
That's definitely the goal. Sinclair's research is laying the groundwork for a new understanding of aging and the development of therapies that could target those underlying mechanisms that drive the aging process. It's about going beyond lifestyle changes and creating more powerful tools to fight aging.
That's exciting. What are some of the most promising areas of research right now?
One area that's creating a lot of buzz is senolytics. They're drugs that specifically get rid of senescent cells. These are like zombie cells that build up as we age and contribute to inflammation and tissue damage.
Zombie cells. Now that sounds interesting. Tell me more about these senolytics. How do they work?
Imagine them like assassins that target and destroy those senescent cells, and then it makes room for healthy cells to grow. It's like weeding a garden. You get rid of the bad plants so the good ones can flourish.
That's a great analogy. So what kind of results are we seeing with these senolytics?
Early research has shown some really promising results in animal studies, things like improvements in age-related conditions like frailty, heart disease, and even cognitive decline. It's still early days, but people are really optimistic about the potential of senolytics.
It sounds like we're on the edge of a longevity revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other areas of research that look particularly promising?
Another exciting one is gene therapy, which could potentially reverse or slow down epigenetic aging.
Wait, are we talking about actually editing our genes to fight aging?
It's definitely early, but the potential is there. Researchers are looking for ways to use gene editing tools, like CRISPR, to target the epigenetic changes that contribute to aging. It's a really complex field, but the possibilities are incredible.
It's amazing to think that we might be able to reprogram our cells to be younger. But what about the practical side of things? These therapies sound really advanced and probably very expensive. Will everyone be able to afford them?
That's a crucial question, and one that researchers and policymakers are talking about. The goal is to make these therapies safe, effective, and available to everyone. But there are definitely challenges: cost, regulatory approval, and making sure everyone has equal access.
It's a complicated situation.
Yeah.
But it's encouraging that accessibility is part of the discussion from the beginning. Now, we've talked a lot about the scientific breakthroughs, but I think it's important to remember the role of lifestyle in all of this. Even if we come up with these amazing therapies, shouldn't we still focus on healthy habits?
Absolutely. Lifestyle is always going to be a foundation for healthy aging. No matter how advanced our technology gets, we can't rely on a pill or a gene edit to do everything.
So it's about taking a holistic approach, combining science with healthy choices. What are some key takeaways for people who want to start incorporating some of these longevity principles into their lives?
Focus on the basics: a healthy diet, regular exercise, stress management, and good sleep. Those are the building blocks, no matter what therapies might come in the future. It's about having a strong foundation for healthy aging.
Back to basics, but with a deeper understanding of why they're important. What else?
Stay curious. The field of aging research is constantly changing. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and find what works for you. It's a journey, and you're an active participant.
It's about taking control of your own health and longevity. I love that. Before we wrap up this part, I want to leave you with this thought.
Yeah.
If you could ask David Sinclair one question about longevity, what would it be?
That's a great question to think about. What really stands out to you from his work? What are you most curious about?
Exactly. Take some time to personalize this research and think about how it relates to you. We've covered a lot today, from the specifics of Sinclair's routine to the broader impact of his research, and there's still so much more to explore. When you think about it, it's pretty amazing how quickly we're learning about aging.
It really does feel like things are changing. And Sinclair's a big part of that. He's not just focused on the science. He wants us to rethink how we see aging. You know, instead of thinking it's this inevitable decline, he wants us to see it as a time full of possibilities.
Yeah, I like that perspective. It's about changing how we think about getting older.
Exactly. And changing our mindset can really change our choices. You know, if we believe we can age well, we're more likely to do things that support our health and longevity.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe you can age well, so you make it happen.
That's a good way to put it. And that connects to something else Sinclair talks about a lot: personal agency. He believes we have more control over how we age than we think.
What does he mean by that?
He's saying we're not just along for the ride, you know? We can actually be involved in shaping our health and how long we live. It's about making smart choices, having healthy habits, and keeping up with the latest research.
It's empowering to know we have a say in how we age. But it can also feel a bit overwhelming. You know, there's so much information out there, and it's always changing.
That's true. We need to be careful about what we believe. We should evaluate the evidence and talk to our doctors to make good decisions for ourselves.
So it's about finding a balance between staying informed and not getting overloaded with information.
Exactly. And that's where resources like this deep dive can help. We try to cut through the noise and highlight the most important things.
Like your guides on this journey of exploring aging. And speaking of exploring, I'm curious about what's next. What are some of the big questions that scientists are still trying to figure out?
One of the biggest ones is, if we can really reverse aging or just slow it down, can we actually turn back the clock in our cells, or are we just delaying what's going to happen anyway?
Yeah, that's the big question. Do you think it's actually possible to reverse aging?
Well, it's definitely something people are debating. Sinclair believes it is possible, and he points to new research that shows some things can actually reset the epigenetic clock and make cells younger.
Wow, to actually turn back time on aging, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But even if we can't fully reverse it, just slowing it down would be incredible, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even adding 10 or 20 healthy years to our lives would make a huge difference for both individuals and society.
Think about the possibilities. More time with family, more chances to do the things we love, more time to make a difference in the world.
It's definitely something to work towards, and the research being done right now is helping us get there.
This has been such an interesting look into the world of longevity. I'm feeling really optimistic about the future of aging.
Me too. It's such an exciting time to be alive. You know, we're seeing these incredible discoveries in aging research. It's happening faster than ever.
And as we finish up today, I want to leave everyone with a sense of hope and possibility. Living longer, healthier lives isn't just a dream. It's something we can all work towards.
Absolutely. Embrace this journey. Stay curious and never stop exploring what we can learn about longevity.
And remember, sometimes the simplest advice is the best. Eat well, move your body, challenge your mind, and nurture your relationships. Those are the keys to a long, healthy life. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of David Sinclair and the amazing science of longevity.